troublemaker. We inducted him like that because we. I figured.
Retired? I knew you were in Vegas. I was like, dude, you can't believe I've been here for 30 years.
Price is right.
God doesn't have much money. That's like a good idea.
He's the one.
I'll sit here and put my. Put your stuff on there later. Seriously.
I just did it to that gal back there.
Well, that's why.
Now she knows all my secrets.
Oh, no. That will have to kill her. But I really don't need mine. So supposedly, if anybody goes and picks up from that line,
Yeah. They're going to reimburse you.
they're gonna reimburse you.
Yeah, what are the chances? Because the thing they didn't tell you is you only have 5 years. That agreement is only good for 5 years. So someone has to pick up on that money within the 5-year period. Once it's over 5 years, the deal's off. I've been down this road before.
I'm gonna tell him that too. He's gonna freak out. He's gonna be so mad at them. Because I think he paid to come a long ways to get it out there.
Let's go to the gym.
Richard, are you ready? It's time, right? Tim, are you okay? Are you guys ready? Call the meeting to order. Please raise for this. Raise your hand. I
United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good afternoon. Call to order.
Roll call. Chairman Azarmi.
Here.
Vice Chair Hamilton.
Here?
Board Member McKee. Board Member McKee. Have him on there. Absent. Board Member Prophet.
Here.
Board Member Renner. Board Member Renner. Absent. Board Member Rugi.
Here.
Board Member Walker.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. Approval of the October 12, 22 meeting minutes. Has the board read, and are we willing to make a motion to approve?
Move that we accept the minutes for the October 12th meeting of 2022.
Okay, we have a motion to approve. We have a second?
I'll second the motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Any nays? Motion carries. Okay, with the old business, we don't have anything. On the new business, item number 1 is election of officers. If I may start with that, I've been honored to be the chair for, I don't know, 12, 15 years, long time. And I think it's time for me to pass the torch. So with that, I'd like to nominate my friend, board member, Richard Hamilton, to become the chair, if there is no objection. Okay, do we have, it's in the form of a motion, so if you have a second.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Now, do we have to do the changeover? What is the laws?
Pardon me, what's the question?
Since we already have, a board approved, a new chair.
Yeah, so Chairman Hamilton is now the chair. Yeah.
Okay, so we're taking over, sir.
next to the vice chair?
Pete. I'm way out.
What'd you guys just do?
You knew it was going to happen.
Richard, the pay is good, don't worry.
Board Member Mehdi, I just want to thank you for all the time that you spend here and all the hard work. I've got some big shoes to fill, apparently.
I appreciate that. Thank you very much. It's honorable for me that, I've been involved with the county for quite some time. And I believe that we accomplished a lot with this team of volunteers, board members, and our hearts are in the right places. And I'm sure with your leadership, you're going to go 2-3 higher, steps. I'm positive sure about that. So thank you.
Thank you. I believe we need a vice chair as well then.
I would make a motion to nominate Pete Profit as the vice chair.
I'll second that.
Pete, do you accept that?
Yes.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second to accept Chairman Profit as the co-chair. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 No opposed. Congratulations. I've got to learn to apparently leave this mic on a little bit longer. Next on the agenda is the year-end performance indicators. Tim or Gilbert, was that?
That's correct. Chair Hamilton. Chairman Hamilton.
That's me?
Yes. Yeah, I just wanted to bring to the board, basically every year we do a building division accomplishments for the last year, 2022. I just wanted to bring to your attention some of the division goals that we made. We actually updated some of our contact review and inspection companies. That's some of our third-party inspection and review companies. We updated some of our contracts for our blighted abatement, some of the contractors for that. We're still moving forward with electronic plan review submittal and Bluebeam to keep some of the electronic submittals in-house. And division was fully staffed for almost a year, and then we lost a couple positions. During the year, we did have some promotions. We increased some people to Inspector 2 positions, Inspector Senior positions, and we created some Inspector Supervisor positions for the Plan Review Division and also for the Inspection Division. Keeping the same people, Brandy Simonson for the Plan Review Supervisor and Paul Bafford for the Building Inspection Supervisor. We had some staff changes over the year. We had we had one inspector move away. We had one inspector pass away. We had a retiree, and we actually, we got an inspector from the Bullhead area we stole, and actually we moved somebody from planning and zoning, code enforcement over into building. Certifications for the year, I won't go through all these, but we did increase quite a few certifications and professional certifications for inspectors and plan review. Training, obviously we did our annual ASBO or Arizona Building Officials Association training and some of that. Just get you down to administration's plan reviews. As you can see, we increased for the year, and yearly we've been doing that, so we increased a couple hundred reviews for the year on that. Inspections on sheet 2, bring your attention to that is we did increase total inspections from 35,000 to 41,000. And what I wanted to bring your attention is we had basically the inspections that were approved. We had a 77% rating on that of inspections, for the whole inspection process. And then we had a correction issues percentage of 20%. So most inspections are passing across the board at almost 80% rate, which I think that's a pretty good rate. That's showing that our inspectors and our contractors are on the same page and doing a good job. Let's see what else. We had our building violations. Those went up a little bit, but again, 80% compliance with ownership. Our dangerous building program, I don't want to bring that to your attention. Currently, we have 70 Well, we have 86 total cases for the year. 70 of those cases were solved by owner compliance. So working with the owners, they basically corrected the violations and abated the dangerous building on their own, not costing the county any money. Another of 9% that the county abated on that. So that's a pretty good rate of 80% compliance. Building red tag program, this is just building violations that were done without permits. We actually had owner compliance of 80% of those, also of them obtaining permits or going forward with permits and inspections. So overall, we had a pretty good year. One last one on the last page, we do have our dangerous building program. We had 48 outstanding lien cases. So we've abated 48 properties and have outstanding liens for cost of the abatements. We're working with the county attorney's office in regards to a payment back program, and we've received some funding, 5 paid liens from that. Basically, the program was the property owners have within 1 year to start making payments on a 10-year payment plan to alleviate some of these liens on the property. So we made that notification to 48 properties. We've recovered 5 already, and I believe the end goal it will be to either try to recoup those costs after the year, and we can possibly go for a foreclosure type system and recoup some of those costs after the first year of non-payment. So that's one of the programs we're working with the county attorney's office. And that pretty much sums up our accomplishments for 2022. It was a busy year. I think all of you guys know as contractors, it was pretty hectic. We haven't slowed down really at all. Our performance indicators are indicating our commercial is going up, our housing is going down a little bit, but overall permits were still ahead of last year at this time. So if you have any questions, feel free to answer them.
Does the board have any questions?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Gilbert, in the last quarter of the year, 2022, obviously you have seen some slowdown on the residential. If you forecast that to 23, do you have any plans? I mean, I really appreciate what you have done and your staff done on putting this report together. It's very impressive. It gives anybody, being a builder, not being a public person, a very good education about the load that you had in 22 and what you accomplished, which is quite significant. I just wondering if you have, forecasted what you anticipate in 2023, considering the fact that, the last quarter of 22, we had some major slowdown.
Want to address that as budget?
Chairman Hamilton, Board Member Azarmi, if I might chime in on that, you're absolutely correct. In looking at our numbers throughout, over the past 4 years, we've definitely seen both comparison-wise over the past year, but then looking comparatively over the past 4 years, we have seen a decrease in December and basically the last quarter of last month, we have seen a decrease as well. We are actually, it's timely that you asked that question. We're working right now on our department budgets, and our budget analyst is reviewing all of those items and working with that in order to basically forecast. We haven't quite got to that just yet. We take a number of items in when we're looking at forecasting, where things are going. We look at basically the trends that we're seeing with the permits coming in. Interestingly enough, we look at landfill tonnages as well to see, what kind of, how much is being taken to the landfill. And curiously enough, that's a similar, a type of indicator that we look at. But we also are following, what the state's putting out as far as the state of the state by the governor and kind of what they're forecasting. So looking at all of those items, we are seeing it's it's anybody's guess, to be honest, but we have seen definitely a slowdown from what we were experiencing, 12 months, 6 months even ago. So we are taking those items into account as we prepare our budgets for the next year, for FY24.
And is that something that, it can change the organization chart that you have right now because of that slowdown?
Absolutely. Definitely what we are doing is looking at those forecasts and seeing how that is going to affect revenues coming in, and then based on those revenues, what we can do with what comes in. So yeah, absolutely it will affect, I think even with the slowdown, we haven't seen enough yet to show that a very steep drop off to where it would affect a drastic cut, but we are cautiously looking towards the future with that. And as Gilbert mentioned, we had a couple of positions that have recently been vacated, and we're watching those. And looking at, prior to filling those, we're looking at some of our performance indicators. How many plans are we reviewing right now? How many inspections are we doing? And how many plans per plan reviewer are we doing, and are we able to turn those around in a timely manner? Looking at those items, and as well as looking at, same thing with the inspectors. How many inspections are they doing in a day? Are we able to keep up with the same day or next day turnaround on those inspections? So those are all things we look at prior to, hey, we got an opening, let's just go fill it. It's, okay, is it needed? And do we want to address it now before it, before, if there is another downturn, then having to look at tougher decisions then.
And the last question on this subject, is it understandable that, because of the slowdown, the turnaround in terms of the review, application, processing, and all that gets faster?
Yes, that is always our goal, is to increase that turnaround time. We actually just had a meeting yesterday in which we were looking, okay, what do we need to do in order, in all aspects? I mean, we want to, as a department, we want to improve our customer service, improve what we're providing for our customers. And number one, time is money. So, the quicker we can get things out, the happier our customers are going to be. So that's always at the forefront of what we're trying to accomplish. What red tape can we cut out in order to make these things faster? But yeah, it's funny that you asked that, because it was just a meeting yesterday that we were discussing that.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, and I'd like to add that Tim, your department, Gilbert, your department has been doing an excellent job in 2022, and hope that this carries on to 2023 as well.
Really appreciate that.
The next item on the agenda is to discuss and possible action regarding geotechnology requirements for commercial and residential properties. I have somebody wants to, Mr. Adams, is this the item you wanted to discuss, or was it another one?
One of mine.
Pardon me?
One of 9, yes.
We're on item 1.
Okay. Thank you. Larry Adams, Mojave Valley Contractors Association. About a year ago, builders started having a lot of trouble with a new requirement for geotech reports. And some of these builders were coming to me, and they were in subdivisions that had built in for a while and built other houses. And all of a sudden they turn in a permit and they have a geotech requirement on that lot, just out of the clear blue. And it went on with various people, and I'd hear about it and hear about it and hear about it. And everybody was going to the county and trying to get a clarification. What's going on with these geotech reports all of a sudden? And we'd think we'd have it solved. Next thing you know, it's rearing its ugly head again. It's not a problem we ever had in the past. I finally ran into it on a residential job on Dyke Road down in the valley. And places on Dyke Road, That subdivision and those lots were put in sometime after the river was dredged, either the late 50s, early 60s, or maybe into the 70s. I wasn't here. I built a number of houses down there on Dyke Road. Never heard of a geotech report. I was doing an RV garage on a house I'd built a year or a year and a half previous. All of a sudden I need a geotech report. Where did this come from? And these geotech reports are extremely expensive to get, particularly on individual residential lots. Now, to the best of my knowledge, Mitty's a subdivider. He can relate to this. Developers, when they do a subdivision, they do a master geotech report on the subdivision, and that's the last we ever hear of it. But all of a sudden, we're getting requests out of the clear blue for geotech reports all over the place. And what you need to keep in mind when a contractor winds up or gets in a position to go get a building permit, he's committed. He's committed on price. He's committed out here. It's too late to be requesting $30,000 items or whatever. And geotech reports, I've been in the business 60 years, are pretty standard. They pretty well always say the same thing. Overestimate 3 feet, reposition and recompact. Now, in a developed subdivision, that's a big deal, and a lot of them are. But we don't know where this stuff comes from. Just all of a sudden, it rains in out of nowhere. And the other reason on geotech reports, most engineers, even on commercial, they engineer for 1,500 pounds per cubic or square foot compaction because it's far cheaper to engineer for the minimum than try to meet the standards to get 2,500 or 3,000 or whatever. We just engineered 1,500. And blow sand will carry 1,500. Where you have a problem with geotech is when you have clay in the soil and it might heave on you. And at least in our part of the country, those problem areas are pretty well known, and they're pretty limited down there. But just all of a sudden, out of the clear blue, these requirements for geotech start raining in on everybody. And of course, as soon as they happen, everybody rings my phone. And I finally got caught with it too, in an area that has been developed for 50, 60, maybe 70 years. All of a sudden, we need a geotech report. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Adams. Gilbert, can you give a little explanation if you could, please?
Chairman Hamilton and board members, in my memo, I kind of indicated out, basically Public Works had been doing the geotech studies for the subdivisions up to 2016. Just basically the summer of 2021, we started getting some new developments in some of the discontinued subdivisions down the Fort Mojave area. There were some questions whether the infrastructure had been put in for the soils report, if there was a soils report adopted and submitted for those subdivisions. And the problem we were seeing was the subdivision was being not developed by one developer. Individual contractors were coming in and buying 2 and 3, 4 lots at a time, and it didn't appear that any of the grading had been done. And so there were some questions of at what point did the subdivision discontinue? Were the reports in? Were they done? Were they not? We started researching a lot of the Public Works records. We found I would say almost all of the geotechnical reports for those subdivisions. There's still a question of whether the grading had been conducted based on those reports. But typically we found those reports. A lot of them had changed names of the subdivision, had changed ownership several times. So it was hard to nail down which report went with what, but we spent the time we spent with Public Works, and we've got a database now of all the soils reports. Within individual areas outside of those subdivisions, we started looking at some stuff and started utilizing those reports that within that surrounding area would be valid for those areas. One of the other tools that we came across was it's a website called USDA Web Soil Survey, and actually that has I believe, contours and different soil characteristics of areas within our county that we can use also. So at one point, it was a question of, yes, should all properties have soils reports? And then we, reeled that back and went, no, we can reasonably use these other tools and the other reports and give that data, back to the developers or the contractors to utilize.
Thank you.
If you have any questions.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
if I may, with my experience, share some information on this geotech. Yes, it is in the code that, we have to, have a geotech, but again, it is unfortunately one size fit all. It means that, for a, let's say, a 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom, 1,200 square foot with 2-car garage versus like a high-rise or a very complex, project, still you have the same, item in there. And it is kind of very, it's just a guideline. And again, the code has provided the leverage to the building official and the county to be able to use common sense and put together something that is going to be practical for the, for the ordinance. We cannot just have like one set of rules. There are so many different variations in it. Like giving you an example, we have a subdivision that was done recently, and they did the geotech, as Mr. Adams mentioned, and they have a geotech random testing done. Maybe if it's 300 homes, maybe 20 different spots, and pretty much provides the information. Then we have subdivisions that are older, but yet there are a lot of homes, or a good portion of number of homes built over a span of, let's say, 30 to 35 years. And, there has been no significant, or there is no problem on the soil. There might be a problem with the framing or whatever, but not on the soil itself. And for that reason, it is in the code that, the building official can take that information and, bypass, having a geotech report done, because as Mr. Adams said, the geotech, right now is anywhere between $7,500 to $11,000, depends on the location. In some cases, it was more expensive than the value of the property itself. Then we have, subdivisions that they are on a old subdivisions that are like, minimum 10,000 square foot for the septic tank. And again, when you do the perk test information that they provide you, that would be as good as, what you need to have for, building a home or building a, structure. You can look at it, because again, the main concern on the, geotech, in my opinion, in our cases in this area, is to make sure that, the quality of the soil can handle the, the weight of that building or the, construction that's going to happen on that property. And for that reason, the perk test, by, going down 10, 11, 13 feet, that would definitely, show the quality of the material that are basically taken out. Meaning, for example, if there is an expansive soil, which definitely that would be a no-no for construction. And then from that point, the choices are, obvious, if they want to get rid of the expansive soil or introduce other means of engineered slabs, like a post-tension slab or something like that. But again, so there are some alternatives available to the Mojave County, to the building official, to be able to use instead of forcing the geotech report. And again, I believe that at the beginning, if I remember it correctly, there were some issues with that. Because, a friend of mine, Glenn Rajanimi, who is here right now, he approached me about 3 properties that he had under construction in the area south end of town in Mojave Valley. And, that subdivision was already built. And as soon as he basically brought it up to my attention, I said, well, no, you need to maybe discuss that that with county, and that's what that was done. And immediately, I think it was ratified. Although the hardship for like 2 months or 3 months, he was, going in that confusion time and created that. But after that, I believe that, pretty much some sort of a new version of ordinance, was put together by, case by case and by, going to different subdivisions, if they had any evidence of any issues or anything like that was brought up to their attention. One thing that I believe that, as I stated, that, one size fits all doesn't work. There are so many different variations in there. But again, if there are going to be a community that they have already existing homes around it, and there is no problem, that should not be an issue for, requiring geotech. If there is going to be a septic tank going in there, the perk test that they do, that should provide information to that. And again, some areas, like for example, on the river, if it is going to be an engineered plans, that should be basically satisfactory because the engineer would consider the information that, they need, and they don't require that, information or geotech report per se. So these are the elements, but the one thing we don't have right now, all that information is there, but I don't believe that we put it together in a form of an ordinance at this time, which I think that needs to be done in a form of a guideline or like, format that would be able to, for the public, for the contractors and everybody else to be able to use that. And I think that's something that we are missing right now because information is getting, for example, in Kingman, is providing certain information to the builders in Fort Mojave in the past couple of times, the staff that are in the front desk, they are not, I believe, educated, and they stop somebody from, proceeding because they say, oh, no, you need to have a geotech. But then, the person would approach somebody if they know someone, and then they would be corrected because, a building official would be able to say, no, okay, that one is okay. I believe that right now we don't have a expanded geotech ordinance in the Mojave County, which I think it is well needed, in my opinion. And again, that's something that, it would simplify. And again, all these nightmare of like this giant, geotech report, to the most of cases is gonna go away, in my opinion, if we have that. Because again, existing subdivision, existing home subdivisions, there should be no problem. The brand new one, there is no problem. The one that they're going to have the septic tank, there should be no problem. And if you take all these different fractions out, you'll see that, there is nothing left to be, unless, there is like a, 40-acre middle of nowhere that you don't see any evidence of any other construction going on, and they do not want to do the septic tank. In that particular case is going to happen, which, normally that is not, a possibility. So for that reason, I just want to make sure that, I bring it up to, your attention that, I believe at the beginning, yes, the cat got out of the bag really fast, and by the time that everybody has started to get to know this, it caused some little bit of a hardship, here and there, time-wise, etc. And maybe there were people that, they followed it and they spend money on it. But in reality, right now, I believe, that the county, at least in the past 6 months or so, or 8 months that I know of, they have used some of these information that I gave you for that purpose. But yes, we don't have, I agree that, we need to have like a set of ordinance that, everybody in Kingman, Havasu, Bullhead, everywhere know, that, okay, my project is going to fall into which one of those subsections. Thank you.
Anybody else have any comments, any of the board?
I wanted to ask Gilbert and maybe Tim, are you aware of certain areas in the county where you do have problems with soils? Specific areas?
Chairman Hamilton, Member Rudy, we basically have looked at, most of the subdivisions had soils reports. And that's what we've looked at of what are those soils reports and what are the foundation recommendations within that soils report. So a lot of them, most of them say over excavate native dirt out, either recompact native dirt or bring an engineered fill at a certain level of 1 to 2 foot. They also might have a recommendation of a larger size footer based on their recommendations of either over-Xing or not over-Xing. So in most of the subdivisions, we've kept with the original reports, and if the reports aren't per se accurate after 10 years, it's been the recommendation to the developer or someone else to pull another report. It might be different, after settling and stuff after 10 or 15 years. So we've pretty much said if there's a soils report on file that we would, we need the recommendation of that report for the foundation. The problem we've had is the outlying areas outside of those subdivisions. What do we do with those? So we've utilized this website for soil configuration requirements, and we've also looked at the soils reports within the surrounding area to get an idea of should those properties have to meet some of the recommendations of the soils reports within that vicinity. So we have been utilizing the reports and individually looking at those properties that aren't in subdivisions to the point of we've even sent one of our engineers down to do kind of a soil look to see what they think. But yeah,
I'm still I'm not really hearing that, this is a requirement based on having problems with standard residential construction in neighborhoods. And I would agree with Larry absolutely that, this is a huge cost and a time factor for, somebody that's just building a house somewhere to have to go and get a soils report when, again, you're not saying that, you've had other problems in that area. It would be one thing to me if, okay, the county has identified, this part of Fort Mojave, okay, we've got documented problems with soils there before. We've had issues with homes. That'd be to me one thing where, okay, we're going to need to see a geotech. But again, I just, from my experience, I don't see, especially in just a standard residential type 1500 PSF bearing capacity, I just don't see the need for soils reports versus just getting compaction tests on the pads when you're ready to build.
Mr. Chairman, if I may add to what you're saying, in terms of the areas that you mentioned, pretty much those of us who've been in the area for quite some time, we know those areas that they have expansive soil. Like for example, in Mojave Valley, there are pockets of layers of clay. El Rio subdivision, which is a golf course community, is known to have that, layer of clay. Or you go further south, Mojave Valley, they have that. And pretty much those are the ones that, should be, respected because of that. Just, doesn't matter if it is 1500 PSF or not. Expansive soil by nature is going to destroy the foundation because they're not set up for that. Depends on the thickness of the layer of the clay and all that. So yes, it is recognized, the communities, that they have issues. And, I know that for a fact, those are being, by builders, they monitor that carefully. But one thing that, I have to mention also, which I believe some of us, like engineers that we have, they know that some of the soil engineers, they use a template and they give you like a book this thick. And no matter what, they give you like that over X. Is there a logic behind it? Scientific data or engineering data? I'm sorry, no. There is not. And some of the things that, you have to watch, like for example, subdivisions like myself, I had to go back to the soil engineer since it was enforced by the county on the geotech that, okay, I need you to go ahead and review it one more time and give the county a letter of clarification that it does not really require it. And soil engineer did that. So what I'm trying to say is that, a lot of that is the common sense. If it's a raw piece of property, it's already graded for quite some time, and over a span of, let's say, 20, 30 years, it's been sitting living there without disturbance. I'm not saying that, let's say that, somebody came in and put in like 50 yard or, 100 yard of dirt fill. I'm not saying that. That is absolutely right. They need to double check that. They need to verify that. That's different. But I mean, if it is graded and it is basically natural, I agree with you 100% that, for the scale of the construction residential that we do, I don't believe that, that would be needed to really over X 4 feet or 2 feet or whatever on that. And another issue that, it is related to the geotech is the water table. The code requires that by the 5 feet water table. If you have like a 5 feet, you get to the water, then definitely you need to have a, geotech report. Well, as far as I know, I don't believe that there is any area that I know of that, we have that situation. Most areas that we have, as close as that I can see, is like about maybe 10 to 15 feet. To the water table, and that's something that would basically exclude that even per code on that part, to do that. And again, one other thing that's very important is that again, if the job is sophisticated enough that would require an engineer to do the job, then the engineer of the record is going to basically assume the responsibility on it, and is going to make that kind of a recommendation on that.
Yeah, that I do. Yeah, I would agree with that. Absolutely. At times I do, I tend to agree with Larry as far as these things that just keep getting added that, we didn't need this 2 years ago, 3 years ago. We didn't need it for the other 40 homes that were in the subdivision. All of a sudden we come along and there's a, $7,000 geotech required. I don't agree with the logic of a Band-Aid approach that everything needs a geotech. I can see it again, where engineers are required, where it's commercial, where there's problem areas, but I think, just my opinion, that, that's going about the wrong approach to just blanket require geotechs when there's not, any evidence that anything that had been built in that area had a problem before.
Chairman Hamilton, if I may.
Please, Mr. Walsh.
Board Member Rugia, I couldn't agree more. A blanket approach on geotechs everywhere is definitely the wrong approach. And I'll be the first to say when this was rolled out a year and a half ago, we did it wrong. We messed up, we made a mistake. And once we got looking at it and really looked into what we were doing, we said, no, this is the wrong approach. This isn't how we should do it. And as Gilbert said, we were able to identify a number of those existing geotech reports that really, I think what precipitated it with staff is we weren't aware of those existing reports. So there was the concern of not having any information on what was there. So once we were able to identify those existing reports and look at those, then that satisfied a huge part of those concerns. What we've done is, as Gilbert had mentioned, for those areas where we don't have any reports, we've worked with basically with the developers there. We've worked with engineers in-house. We've worked online to look at what the soils have been categorized in that area to determine, hey, is this something that's even a concern? And definitely we've done we had egg on our face, and we've been working really hard to try and pull that back and really only look for those geotech reports in areas that are of concern. Virgin soil that's out there in the middle of nowhere, and basically the web soil survey says it's good soil. Geotech wouldn't be required. It's you cut it and you build your house on it. In subdivisions, we get those geotechs with the subdivisions, and we're able to look at it that way and determine what's going on. I think what happened, part of the problem is, as Gilbert alluded to, was in 2008, we had a number of subdivisions just stop. And then the question became, okay, was there a geotech then? Were those requirements met? And trying to decipher those things, that really brought a lot of the confusion at the time, and that's where we stumbled when we tried correcting those issues. So no, I agree with you. It's not a one-size-fits-all. We shouldn't be approaching it as a one-size-fits-all. And really, we don't, to answer your question, we don't have a map per se that says, okay, here's a problem area, here's a problem area, there's a problem area. Generally, what we're doing right now, and Gilbert can correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is right now what we're doing is as we get these permits in, if we're not aware of a geotech report, or if we're not aware of one for that specific lot or that location, we will look in the area to see, what is the soils made up? Are there any other geotechs in that area that we can refer to? And those look great. Okay, we're good to move on without one.
Mr. Chairman, Tim, as you know, about my thinking is over 95% of the applications that are coming for the residential homes or projects like that would fall into one of these, subsections that, we can, bypass geotech. And at this point, we don't have an expanded geotech ordinance. Is it possible for us to, do that? And again, I'll be more than happy to team up with your team and, provide whatever information I can to provide the support to have these all different classification, different sections, different possibilities. And this way, an applicant would be able to say, okay, yeah, I qualify for this item and, go in that direction.
I think both the map, I think it'd be a great idea to have a map of the county showing where those problem areas might be that we're aware of. But then, then extracting from that map, these areas are okay, that we don't need additional testing in those areas, or, I think it's definitely worth looking at. I've got the code pulled up, and Gilbert's much more versed, so if I've got the wrong location, I'll have him stop me. But in the IRC R401.4 soils test, it says where quantifiable data created by accepted soil science methodologies indicate expansive soils, which we've talked about, compressible soils, shifting soils, or other questionable soil characteristics are likely to be present, the building official shall determine whether to require a soil test to determine the soil's characteristics at a particular location. This test shall be done by an approved agency using an approved method. So, they do go in and then say without a geotech, then it gives the load-bearing pressures that Mr. Adams had spoken to as well. So it's not a very large section. I think it does address basically if there's questions in an area, then we'll want additional testing. But I think definitely whether it be an ordinance or whether it just be a policy in-house of, hey, these areas, a map, these areas are a problem. Outside of that, we don't need specific geotechs for these individual properties. Something along those lines, I think both approaches would help clarify those items, definitely.
Yeah, because at this point, again, Mr. Chairman, excuse me.
I was just going to, so to clarify, the item before us is to either take no action on the geotech report or to make a recommendation such as what we're hearing thus far of the county comprising a map of areas of what the geotech report basically is, without the contractor or the developer having to submit one unless it's a possible large development. Is that correct? Is what we're looking at as a board?
Mr. Chairman, I think it is a little bit more complicated than that because the map is for Mojave County. You're looking at about, what is this, the 5th largest county in the United States? It would be very, very, troublesome in my opinion. However, I believe that, if we have that classification or ordinance that we just talked about, because for example, if we have a existing subdivision, okay, either it has the geotech already or the geotech is missing for whatever the reason, older subdivision. So it goes to two different ones. So when you have that first one, the applicant knows that, okay, I'm okay because the geotech is available. Or no, geotech is not available, but yet there are so many homes already built in that community. And for that reason, the building department, building official should be okay with that because there is no evidence of any problem. And then, when we go to the situation of the septic tank, the perk test, when they have to do the perk test, that perk test can be used by the county, by the building official, by the builder as a very good evidence of that. And this is not going to be a repeating cost for that. I mean, give you an example, the case that I brought up for the, Mr. Rajanimi, in my opinion, the value of the PERC test, the value of the geotech report was significantly more than the value of the land, which is like, impossible for those people, 3 people to even, cough up that kind of a money to be able to do that, not to mention about 3 months time right now to find a soil engineer, and I'm sure Pete would be able to say that, that it's very difficult to find, soil report and soil things that easily. So my thinking is, the map, maybe it would be the thing, but I suggest that, we would have some sort of a, classification.
Chairman Hamilton, if I might make a suggestion or maybe try and answer your question, I believe Attorney Haas might have some input as well. I think the options before the board at this time would be, one, A, no action, or B would be to direct staff to look into either a policy or an ordinance to bring back to the board with a recommendation, which then the board could review and then make a recommendation on.
That is correct. That's exactly what I'm asking.
Mr. Chairman, I'm going for a B.
Chairman Hamilton and Board Member Azarmi, just for clarification purposes, I want to be clear that the board's function here is to make recommendations to the Planning and Zoning Commission and then on to the board for changes to the building code. This is the Building Code Advisory Board. And therefore, really the options that are available to the board are to take no action or to propose a change to the building code. And so you can ask staff to try and draft some change that to propose in the building code, in this section of the building code, or alternatively, if someone has something in mind, some language that they would like to put into the building code, that can be put into the form of a motion.
Yeah, that's well understood.
May I ask, with that, it could be, or we can ask them or direct them for an in-house policy as well without changing the board. Is that correct?
You really don't. You can ask them for it, but this board has no teeth to be able to require administrative changes within the Development Services Department. That is at the discretion of the Board of Supervisors and the county manager.
Thank you. So in reality, it is that simple. We really just want to make take the action of either no action or directing the board or staff to make recommendations to continue on.
Mr. Chairman,
another.
Yes. It is my understanding that we are advisory board, so we are not going to be in the position to direct. I think that what we have to do is to, make a recommendation to the staff, as Director Walsh said, to go with, let's say, Plan B, which for them to go back and review and come up with another review of the geotech report and bring it back to us. We are going to basically review it, and then we make that recommendation to the Planning and Zoning Commission, and from Planning and Zoning Commission goes to the Board of Supervisors for the approval.
That is correct, and that's why I'm asking that, because we need to vote on this to either take action A of no action or B of directing it back to the board.
Okay, so when we're ready, I can make the motion.
Chairman Hamilton, if I may. Mr. Haas, one question I have as the building official would be, would this be a verbiage change in the code that would be addressed, as they can't make a recommendation of policy?
And that's what I was trying to, and I think I hope we're all on the same page here, that what the Building Code Advisory Board does is makes changes or recommended changes to the building code. Right. And so the possible motions you could have is to, one, take no action, and two, ask staff to bring you back a proposal to make a change to the building code, which addresses the concerns that have been brought up.
Correct.
But that's all. But those are the only two actions that can really be taken, unless one of the board members has some specific language today that they would like to propose to be included in the building code.
Oh, I guess we're good. If that's the case, I'll make a motion for staff based on the communication that was going on in this discussion we had to bring back, some changes before the board.
Before I were to second, I just would like to, for me, it comes down to how this exception is handled by the building code. I've always felt in the past, I know this language has been in there for years about the building official shall be permitted to waive the requirement for geotech where, it goes on and on. I guess, to me, it's how that's interpreted. It seems to me like that's been a change in interpretation where historically things were accepted that now all of a sudden, we have to have a valid geotech for a subdivision within 10 years or so. So to me, it's not even so much a change of the code, it's an in-house policy of what constitutes satisfactory data that you are not going, and to me, the status should be that it's not required unless you have some evidence of a particular area needing it. So I don't know that's really a change to the code. It's just what is the building official's interpretation of that exception in 1803.2.
I need to interrupt for a minute. I believe we do have a motion. I do need a second so we can continue on with discussion.
I'll make a second, but I do think we need more discussion.
That is correct. We do have to have the second to continue on with discussion.
Okay. Do you have anything else?
No,
My question is, so in an existing subdivision, would a soils report for a PERT test make the county happy? You could tell by that what kind of soil you're dealing with.
I'm sorry, Chairman Hamilton, Board Member Walker, would you mind repeating that? I apologize.
Yeah, in an existing subdivision, would a PERT test be good enough for what we're looking for in an existing subdivision?
Chairman Hamilton, Member Walker, actually there is a table in the IRC and also a table in the IBC that does have soil configurations that septic does use. I'll just say for the 1500 bearing pressure, it calls out, that one. It calls out for clay, sand, silt, clay, sand, silt, and starchy, silty. So those are recognized soil configurations that septic does, and I'm certified in septic, so that's the same thing. But it gives it all the way from the 1500 bearing pressure, up to 4,000 based on that soil configuration. So yes, we could look at a septic report if done with those soil characteristics and make a determination on soil bearing pressure, yes.
Okay.
So we have a motion and a second before us to send a recommendation to the staff or for the staff to reevaluate and send recommendations back to the Advisory Code Board. Is there any more discussion with this?
What happens with applications that are in process right now that may be required to have a soils report that?
We can't make that decision. That's still as far as the...
Chairman Hamilton, if I might, I can address that. We've, like I said, about a year and a half ago, we made this error. Since that time, we've pulled back, and basically what's been discussed as being proposed and that, we've been following that most recently. So those that are in applications that are in there right now or that are being reviewed right now are being reviewed under this policy of, unless we know of poor soils in that area, we're not going to require a geotech report. Right. Basically, what we look at is geotech reports in the area to see if those identify any poor soils in the area. Look at this web soil survey and other type of whatever information we have. So currently, we are not requiring geotechs for every permit.
Thank you. Is there any more discussion? So the vote for the motion before us is to send this to staff recommendation. All those in favor of this motion signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Do I have to bang the gavel? Motion passes.
Put it to use.
The next item on the agenda is item number 4, discussion and possible action regarding energy code requirements for commercial projects. And we still have the same paper for Mr. Adams for line item number, or agenda item number 4.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, board members, most of you were here when we passed the 2018 building code. You were told repeatedly that the energy code was a piece of garbage and we were not going to adopt the building code or the energy code. What they didn't tell you is they left it on commercial. So they took it off residential, but they left it on commercial. And I don't know if you've read the energy code, but it is a piece of garbage. And if the building official chooses to follow the energy code by the letter of the law, it's a screaming nightmare. You can have independent testing agencies, air infiltration. I would encourage you to read it and see what could possibly happen, just at the whim of the building official. But the important thing is this board and the Board of Supervisors and everybody was told that energy code is a bunch of garbage and we are not going to adopt it. They didn't tell you they were going to leave it on commercial. There is a misconception on commercial, I really think. As soon as you say a project is commercial, everybody goes into a spasm. But the vast majority of commercial projects are mom and pop little things that don't amount to any more than a single family residence. Just because they can hang a tag out here and says it's commercial doesn't mean it's a 25-story multi-rise building with all kinds of special problems. 90% of the commercial projects are mom and pop operations, small business people trying to make a living, trying to find a way to provide for their families. And all of a sudden we have this multitude of additional requirements for no good reason because we can hang the tag commercial on it. But specifically to this agenda item, most of you were here. You heard that what you were told from this podium. We're not going to adopt the energy code. Didn't quite tell you the whole story. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Adams?
Mr. Adams?
I have a
No,
question.
please.
Mr. Adams, could you give us the top 3 problematic items that you have with this commercial? Because you do a lot of commercial, you know better than any of us, including myself. The top 3 that really is troublesome to you on this energy code that, 2018?
Well, I read the energy code because all of a sudden it became aware on me.
Right.
They said they didn't adopt the energy code, but all of a sudden I find out we got it on commercial.
No, I know, but...
So I read it at that time, but I didn't sit down and make a list of it. Primarily what I recall from memory, and I didn't make a list, I can, but primarily what it is, just at the whim of the building official, he can require a third-party special inspection on air infiltration, all sorts of things. And based on our recent experience, good God knows what that's going to mean.
Right. Well,
But if you would like, I'll go through it and make a list. I have not done that.
I think what he's asking, and I'd like to know myself, Mr. Adams, have you had any specific problems with Mojave County Building Department on your commercial projects since the code has been adopted?
Yes.
Can you be specific with that, please?
Specifically as a shell building, a commercial building on Huntington. That's when in Mojave Valley. It's a shell building. It's a speculation. It's a pre-engineered metal building. Took me 4.5 to 5 months to get that permit. All of a sudden, with all the new requirements that we've decided we're going to do in Mojave County, and that's where this energy thing I became aware of it for the first time. Oh no, they left the energy code on there. Now, because it was a shell building, after 2 or 3 months, I was able to get around that pretty well, but I don't know what's going to happen on the next one. There's too much left at the discretion of the building official. You have no idea what's going to come up next. None.
Mr. Adams, could you please be specific on what energy code you ran into on your shell, on the commercial building that was a shell building?
Okay. I didn't make a list. I'm not prepared to give you that. If you want it, I'll get it for you. But I was made aware that I had to do these additional things for the energy code to comply with it. When I once again told them, have you looked at the plans? Do you understand this is a shell building? This is after 2 or 3 months. When they did so, oh, we didn't understand that. No, that'll be okay. But if you would like me to do that, I'll be glad to do that.
And I understand that, and it would probably be, the board would probably like that as well. I was speaking for the board. And the reason I say this is this is presented before us to either take action or not take action. And it's really, we're blind on this because we have no action, no idea of what action we need to take because we don't have anything to take action on other than a full blanket of the energy code. We do know that there's certain areas in the codes that the county can adopt or not, and that's part of the reason we're here as well on the recommendations of that. But if we don't know what specifically we're talking about on the code, it makes it hard for us. I hope I'm speaking for the rest of the board.
Mr. Chairman,
yes.
I remember going through this, and I remember, well, hopefully my memory's right, that we did think we were leaving the energy code out of this, and part of the concern was were these bigger companies that come in Mojave County going to say, well, they don't even adopt the energy code, you know, but they can still build it with the energy code. But I thought we did leave it out, that it was not a requirement. Maybe I don't know if we can go back and
if I remember correctly, I'll get right to you.
Yeah.
Go ahead,
Member Walker. When we adopted the 2006 code, we did not adopt any of the Energy Conservation Code. And the Energy Conservation Code addresses residential and commercial. However, in the residential code, there is a chapter, an energy efficient chapter 11 in the residential code that addresses minimum energy requirements. So the International Energy Conservation Code is more based on energy conservation. Okay, when we adopted the 2012 code, we did adopt the 2006 International Energy Conservation Code for both commercial, but not for residential. We went with Chapter 11 again, and that was the same when we adopted the 2018 code. We adopted the 2018 International Conservation Code for commercial, but we did not adopt it for residential, and we made amendments to the Chapter 11 energy efficient section in the IRC to address residential. Now, one thing to be known is there is no other energy requirements in the IBC to address commercial structures. So the IECC is the only document that is used for any energy conservation for commercial structures.
So basically what you're saying is that the energy efficient code, the energy code didn't really change, or we did adopt part of that?
We had adopted the 2006 Energy Conservation Code for commercial when we had the 2012 code. When we went to the 2018 code, we adopted the 2018 Energy Conservation Code for commercial. So in essence, the last code change, we went one code down on that book. We've always had it. In this case, we just came up to current code. There hasn't been a lot of changes in the commercial portion of the Energy Conservation Code. Again, in my memo, most designers are using it. There's 3 different methods you can use to comply with it. There's a prescriptive method, a performance method, and then a cost savings method. Most of the designers and most of the people are using what's called CompCheck. It's an energy program provided by the U.S. Department of Energy. It's free. You have to you have to learn how to use it and plug in your instruments, and then it gives you a pass or fail on, say, the thermal envelope. They basically take the whole building as a whole and take all the aspects of the building, the flooring, the roofing, the walls, the windows, and they plug it all into a program, and it passes or it fails. So that's been used since 2006. That has been out to do that, and we've adopted it in 2012. Another one I just might say is shell buildings in this case, they don't have an occupancy. So a lot of these energy conservation stuff is based on the occupancy. So no energy efficiency would be done on a shell building until a tenant moved into it and would have to meet those codes for that occupancy.
Does the board have any more discussion on this?
Mr. Chairman. Gilbert, so based on the communication you just had with us, the only difference between what we had in the past and what we have now, 2018, is the requirement of that program to be able to, calculate, the envelope that, is submitted to you, right?
The 2006 code and 2018 code, there is some changes. There was some changes in window fenestration ratings, some of the insulation factors, but the program itself has been around since the 2006. It's just a matter of plugging in all the components of the building, and you pass or you fail. And what we've seen is it's pretty easy to pass. I mean, you usually have pretty large structures, and then there's some give and take of, say, large warehouse buildings. They don't have to meet all the full heating requirements or cooling requirements. So there are some exceptions within that for warehousing and something like that that's not really habitable or workable living space.
Mr. Chairman, so basically like a tenant improvement, a small tenant improvement that, somebody wants to do and it's a commercial building, would that also fall into the same category, or is it like, certain size up, like, it's a new construction, new restaurant or something like that is going to be into that category?
Typically, it's new construction because a lot of times the existing buildings fall under the existing building code, which doesn't require the building to come up to the current code levels. So there are some takes on if there's a complete change of use, then some things click in that, energy has to be looked at on that way. But a lot of the designers are actually just doing the comp check report for the smaller TIs, and they're passing no problem because they're very small. It's usually the larger structures that really have to address the energy conservation portion because of the use. I mean, they're using, I'll give for instance, and Mr. Walker can agree to this. We just did a warehouse building where they basically installed, I think it was 500 BTU furnaces, ceiling suspended furnaces for the workers in the thing. You go to the building and there's no insulation, it's a complete steel building. So that right there is, I can't require them to come to the energy code, but they did install heaters to have their employees warm, but look at the energy that they're using to do it. That's kind of the concept of the energy code is let's look at some of this stuff to save energy and have a sustainable building that's gonna work and save energy down the road.
I would like to recommend to the board that we table this item possibly till the next meeting, and then Mr. Adams, if you can come with documentation as well of the specifics that you've had with issues as far as the commercial buildings go, that would be my recommendation to the board.
I agree.
I absolutely agree with that. Did you make a motion or?
No, I can't make a motion.
Chairman Hamilton, just as a point of order, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe the intent is to continue the item to the next meeting. So there's some procedural issues. If you table it, it has to be removed from the table. But if you just continue it, it automatically puts it on the next agenda.
Thank you for correcting my verbiage.
I'm sorry, just trying to be precise so that we don't have any issues.
I just got on here an hour ago.
I understand. So.
I'm a little rusty.
Chairman Hamilton, if I may, I did survey all the other counties in the state. Actually, if we can hand that out. And most all the jurisdictions, even the smallest ones, have adopted the IEC, the International Energy Conservation Code. Most of them have made differences in their residential portion of it. So they have made amendments like we did, where they either didn't approved the International Conservation Code and went with Chapter 11 of the IRC for residential structures, or they amended part of the International Conservation Code to satisfy their jurisdictional requirements. So if you take a look at that, there's only one county in the state that has no adopted code, and that's Greenlee.
And Chairman Hamilton, just as a point of order, once again, not for the board or any of the board members, but Patty, if you have another copy of that, if you could put it on the overhead for the benefit of the public, thank you.
That's why you're here.
I would very much agree with the continuing this to the next meeting. I have to say I'm a little bit ignorant about what the energy code specifically requires, and I would personally like to be able to look into it also, in addition to giving Larry a chance to come up with some things that he, I've had a little bit of experience with that energy code, and again, my experiences were not great. It was easy enough to do the comm check, but even doing the comm check, it was kind of like, okay, did I learn anything? Did anything change? No. But I had to delay, my submittal for a couple of weeks, and it cost me, again, money out of pocket. But it didn't change anything that we were doing. And I'm a little bit ignorant on this, and I'd like to have a chance to look into this myself.
Is that a motion?
Was that a motion?
Mr. Chairman,
I would love to
excuse
make
me.
that motion.
Yes, Mr. Adams.
Call me back up here. A couple of things I would like to say.
Please.
First of all, you would have an action. You could unadopt the energy code. Now, if you want me to research it for you, I'll be glad to do that. But it is not 500 pages. It's fairly short. I would invite the members of this commission, get it out and read it and see how livable you think it is, depending on the interpretation. I can make you a list, but you do have a course of action. You didn't adopt it on the residential. You cannot adopt it on the commercial. So you do have a course of action. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Adams. We have a motion and a second to continue this to the next meeting. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries.
Chairman Hamilton, if I may say, the International Energy Conservation Code is online. It is accessible through the ICC website, so you can view it online.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Gilbert, may I ask you to share that link with everybody, including the stakeholders? And this way it would be recorded that way.
It is ICC safe.
I know, but if you could.
Okay. I can put it out for.
Thank you.
The next item is, agenda item is number 5, the discussion and possible action regarding building permit applications and submittal requirements, proof of owner authorized. Mr. Adams, we're going to put you a stool up there so you don't have to leave.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, board members, again, here's something that says brand new, just rained in out of the sky. If we're going to get a building permit, particularly on commercial, they want a copy of the deed or a title report. We can get those. It costs money. But I have to ask myself, do you really think people are out here getting building permits to build projects on land they don't own? And if this has ever been a problem in my 58 years in Mojave County, I never knew of it. I don't know why all of a sudden it is, but it appears to me we're spending a whole lot of time creating problems where problems don't exist. But now one of the requirements is, yes, we want a title report or a copy of the deed because you submitted a building permit application. Now, if there's some rhyme or reason to that, I sure can't find it.
Thank you, Mr. Adams. Is there any discussion from the board on agenda item number 5?
Mr. Chairman, Gilbert, could you elaborate on the need for
Chairman Hamilton and board members, I'm just going to read my staff report. When a person applies for a building permit, ownership of the property is looked up by the permit technician utilizing the county assessor's property ownership records. Both the International Residential Code and the International Building Code require that only the owner or the owner's authorization may apply for the permit. If a person applying for the permit is not the property owner of record, according to the assessor's records, a letter of authorization from the property owner is required. There are times when the assessor's property records are delayed, often due to high volume of sales, and in this case, a legal document of ownership, such as a deed of trust, is required to establish the ownership. This is to prevent permits from being applied for without the owner's consent, i.e. squatters, speculators, and tenants. And yes, we have had people pull permits that were not property owners.
So, Gilbert, would it be fair to say that if the contractor per se comes in with the contract from the owner of the property, is that sufficient as well? That language isn't in what you just read, but...
Chairman Hamilton, if I may, I believe that would cover one of the, that would cover the permission to build on the property. What we've run into recently, and I think it has been because of the high volume of sales going on, there was some delay in being able to verify ownership on the assessor's website. So what our permit techs do, and Scott can speak to this more, but our permit techs will, they'll pull up on the assessor's website the property information to see who owns that property. And as long as that matches up with what's on the, either on the contract like you're referring to or the application, we continue to process. Where we question it is when the owner shown on the paperwork on the application doesn't match what's shown on the assessor's website. And at that point, then we ask for some sort of proof of ownership so that somebody who doesn't own the property is not making improvements to a property that they don't own.
So this would be more of a county issue?
From a delay in getting those records changed, I think that's a fair statement, yes.
Any discussion from the board?
Mr. Chairman, I would just like to comment. I've never recognized this to be a big problem. I mean, I can't imagine the county not going through this step. It kind of seems as a responsible step for them to take, and it's part of the code. My recommendation, in fact, I would make a motion that we take no action on this.
Thank you, Vice Chairman.
I just wanted to, did you just say that you continue to process?
As long as we can verify that ownership, yeah, we continue to process it. If we have the discrepancy between the application and what we're seeing on the assessor's page, that's where we request some sort of proof of ownership. And once we receive that, then we continue to process.
At what point, though, is that required? At the time they put in for permit or prior to issuance?
When they apply for the permit.
Yes, that's, I don't know if that's...
I have a motion. I really need a second before we can continue discussion again, please.
I'll second the motion.
Is there any further discussion?
So is there anything on the county's end that would just, could this not just be a condition prior to permit? Just like there are corrections typically on just about every set of plans, could this not be just a condition that prior to permit issuance, you're going to need to provide that? Because I know for myself, I've applied for a ton of permits for a lot of people over the years, and it's just, it can be very difficult and hard to get that document when I'm trying. The whole point is to get in that line. Can this not be something that can just, you could continue to process it, but prior to issuance, this would have to be a condition that would be resolved?
Mr. Chair, members of the board, for our purposes, we would want to make sure that it is the property owner that is requesting it from the beginning, because we don't want to get all the way to the end of the review and the process and then come to find out that it's just a tenant applying or something like that, and then all that work has been wasted. We would much rather request it and require it right at the beginning. And like what was said before, it hasn't really been much of an issue. The only time that we've found that it has been an issue is if, like Director Walsh said, if the information's not on the assessor's page, and at that time we will request a deed or a title to be submitted to us to just prove, okay, yeah, this is the new owner. It hasn't been changed in the assessor's office. Sometimes we're able to even look that up ourselves because we have access to the recorder's office information. We can look up a lot of the deeds ourselves. And so it hasn't really been much of an issue to be able to verify who is the owner of the property.
Mr. Chairman, Scott, have you had cases that people actually not being the owner apply on something that they don't own and pay the fees and everything, and then you find out that that is not their property? I mean, I just don't understand. You're saying that, you know, there are possibilities that, you know, they would be able to apply as a non-owner, and then, you know, they pay the fees and they do the process, and then they find out that, you know, the property is not theirs. Is that what I'm hearing?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner, or Board Member Azarmi, I have not run into that issue, most likely because we require it from the beginning. We're making sure it is the owner from the beginning who is applying, so we haven't ran into that issue, no.
Chair Hamilton and board members, we have had some cases on dangerous building cases where a speculator would come in and try to pull a demolition permit for some of the dangerous buildings that we're having active cases on in order to pick those up at a cheaper cost. So we have had some instances of that, trying to pull a demolition permit without the owner's permission.
Yeah, but that's different.
The motion before us is to take no action on agenda item number 5. Is there any further discussion on this?
I guess I'm just, I'm still not really understanding, I guess, the benefit of having to have that information up front. You had said you don't want to do a lot of work on it, but you've gotten a permit fee or you've gotten a review fee for that. So not like the county hasn't been paid for their time to do. To me, the person that's applying that hasn't proven they're the owner, I mean, they're the only ones at risk in that. I mean, they're at risk of losing those fees for, you know, not being able to get anything because they can't, in the end, prove that they're the owner or the owner's agent. But I don't, you know, even as a speculator, I don't know, to me, you know, just you were saying that, and I was envisioning a situation where I'm trying to give a bid on a demolition. It'd be nice to know what the county's corrections are going to be before I ever pull that permit. You know, I could see that being valuable, you know, hypothetically. I mean, I've never had that situation, but, you know, I could see a case where you might want to be able to get a little bit of information from the county, you know, prior to making a commitment. So I think that's about all. I don't see it being a big deal either way.
Scott.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, the other reason why we wouldn't want to take in a permit if it is not the property owner and they go through the whole process is our customer service. If they get to the end of the permit and we tell them, okay, you're not the owner, then they're going to be pretty upset with us. And why didn't you tell us at the beginning that we couldn't apply for this permit and now we paid these fees and now you're just telling us right at the end. So that's customer service is really why we would want to maybe tell them right at the beginning, okay, you aren't the property owner. We need verification that you can pull these permits from the property owner.
Chairman, so as it is now, when somebody turns in a permit, you guys verify it either is or isn't?
Correct.
But you're wanting us to provide this up front now, or you're still going to check it?
Mr. Chair, members of the board, so it's always been a requirement ever since I've been here. And proof of ownership has always been a requirement. A lot of times it's easy because it's right on the assessor's page. We can tell you exactly, yeah, you are the owner. But sometimes it's not, like we were saying before. If it's a new property owner, somebody just sold the property, it's not up on our assessor's page yet. So we're requesting that the applicant come in with some type of proof that they did buy the property or they now own that property.
Chairman Hamilton, members of the board, I just want to try and streamline things as much as I can. I am concerned that we're talking past each other. The staff and the board are talking past one another. Correct me if I'm wrong, Scott, but my understanding of what the current process is that when the application comes in, if staff can verify on the assessor's website the ownership, then this does not become an issue. It's only if staff can't verify the ownership with the assessor's website or the recorder's website, that at that point you go back to the applicant and say, hey, we need a copy of a deed or a contract or some sort of authorization that allows you as the applicant to pull a permit on this that you don't appear to own. Is that correct?
That is correct.
We'll leave as is.
And so I just want to make sure that I understand that's the only time that this is happening, is you're looking for that. But again, if the board wants to make a change to the code as to how this is dealt with, we can certainly do that. But I want to make sure that everybody understands from staff's point of view and from the board's point of view what the process is currently.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any more discussion on this? I just would like to add, I understand completely why this is in effect and more so in a demo point of view, a demolition of a piece of property where somebody wants to come in and do a demolition on a property and you can't verify the owner, then they're not going to issue the demolition. So you probably see it on TikTok every now and then as the joke, but the motion before us right now is to have no action taken on agenda item number 5. Is there any further discussion?
I would like to just comment that, you're saying that this has been enforced for a long time. But, again, in my past, I put in a ton of applications over the years for owners without ever having to prove it at application submittal.
And the way I understand it, it's going to stay that way, but if your application doesn't correspond with what's on the tax rolls, they're going to question you. That'd be the only time we have an issue, correct?
Okay? So
leave as is.
So a contractor would be able to apply as long as the owner that they're saying it is the owner, and okay, so this is only if you get it in a situation where you can't verify that.
Yes.
All right, I'm good.
All those in favor of the motion before us for agenda item number 5 signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. Agenda item number 6, discussion and possible action regarding development review and building permit review process. Mr. Adams, you're listed to speak on this matter.
Here again of late, there's been a change in how you do all of these things. And I find out Mojave County has a whole lot of different departments that have a say in a building permit. And I'm quite frankly getting tired of hearing that this has been in place quite a while. I've been in place quite a while. Now I find out that we have a separate department that reviews the address. We have a flood control department. We have an engineering department. We have a health department. We turn a permit in, and this has been going on here recently, and after 2 or 3 weeks, it dawns on us our permit's not moving. So we start trying to sort out why our permit isn't moving. We find out the building department hasn't even started the review because they haven't heard from the flood control department, or they haven't heard from the engineering department, or the gal that does addresses is on vacation, and they're not going to start their review till everybody else gets their review in. I'm not sure how many departments we have now that are individual and independent, but I think it's about 6. And there's nobody looking out after the master thing to see that it happens. It's left up to us to figure out why isn't this permit moving, and then figure out where the roadblock is. And every time we go to a department, say, well, that's not us, it's them over there. Well, that's not me, it's them over there. And we're left with trying to sort that out and get the permit moving. And it's pretty doggone frustrating. What I say to everybody, I've got to know all of this to get a permit. Why don't you put one county employee up here at this desk that can tell me what you expect me to know? Thank you.
Staff?
Address development review.
Chairman Hamilton, members of the board. Development review, and I think there was a couple of things touched, but specific to development and building review, in the case of say a commercial, so commercial developments require a site plan. So in the case of a commercial development, a site plan is required. That's submitted to the Development Services Department. Planning and zoning takes the lead on that. And then there are a number of departments that they coordinate with. But that planner is responsible for that permit or for that site plan review. They send it to Public Works, Environmental Health, Environmental Quality. Just as Mr. Adams said, there are a number of agencies that do review it. When it affects ADOT, it goes to ADOT for review. And basically those are sent out. Once those comments are then received, they're compiled and returned to the applicant. With regards to a building permit in relation to that same site plan, the building permit can be applied for at the same time, and they are reviewed concurrently. However, a building permit will not be issued until that site plan has been approved, and that's to prevent any changes that might occur to the site plan that might affect the building. So first, the site plan has to be approved before the building permit can be issued. As far as one person to oversee all processes, I believe that's a later agenda item, but I can speak to it a little bit here as far as how that would go. Generally, as I mentioned, the planner who oversees the site plan is responsible to track that site plan, make sure that all the comments are received, and if comments are not received, they're given a deadline, and Scott can add any details that I'm missing here, but any comments that are not received by any of the various agencies are deemed as them approving it if they're not received by that deadline. So we process it if we don't receive it by the deadline and report all those comments back to the applicant. Definitely there's always room for improvement. What we try to do and what we are sometimes we fall short on is following up with the other departments and finding out where those are. I definitely can understand Mr. Adams' complaint that, hey, that's this department, call them. We can, and we will be working towards more reaching out ourselves, that planner reaching out to the building department, reaching out to ADOT or Public Works to see where that application is at those times when questioned, rather than sending the applicant over. At times, it is more advantageous to have the applicant work with those various departments. For example, if Matthew Gunderson in our planning department is over the site plan, he's not going to know the intricacies of Public Works and what they're requiring. So at times it may be more advantageous to say, these are the comments that we've received, but if you work directly with Public Works to address whatever issues they have, you can work with them and then they will submit a follow-up letter to us. So at times it is better to send them to the various departments to do that.
Well, thank you. I have a couple comments that I'd like to address with our attorney, if I may, please. On agenda item number 6, 8, and 9 at this point in time, are these actually agenda items that concern the Mojave County Advisory Code Board?
I would say that as they are written, they don't appear to. They are open for discussion if the board is able to come to a conclusion as to some change or modification to the building code that it would like to propose to address any of those items. The board can certainly do that. But from my perspective at this point, and just looking at the items as they're agendized, they don't appear to be really addressing the building code unless one of the board members comes up with some change to the code that they would like to propose that's related to that item.
Because as I look at these, I don't see where there's any type of code proposal on this at all. And for an example, on agenda item number 6, this is a internal, basically a county problem or not a problem, but a process that the county goes through for a permit, where as a code, we have no action to take or recommendations to make on this whatsoever. Is that correct, Mr. Walsh?
I'll defer to Attorney Haas on that.
Chairman Hamilton, as it is agendized, it does appear that way, that this is something that if it needs to be addressed, should be addressed with either the Board of Supervisors directly or with the county manager or Director Walsh. So,
Thank you. Would it be fair to say that we can delete line items 6, 8, and 9 off of our agenda today with a vote of the board or some way, shape, or form?
Chairman Hamilton, I would agree that I don't see any way. I'm open to ideas, but I don't see any way that any of these 3 items that action could be taken by this board. However, they are open for discussion. And if one of the board members comes up with an idea as to how to change the building code to address these issues, they do need to be addressed in some fashion for discussion at least.
Well, I would like to add, if there's a way that the board might have a recommendation to change these actions, it would probably go before the Board of Supervisors rather than this board. We do have a supervisor here. Supervisor Agnes, would you like to speak on this item, please? On my interruption of the agenda.
Yeah, I was just wondering if this board can make a recommendation for something to go straight to the Board of Supervisors instead of going back to staff.
Supervisor Angus, Chairman Hamilton, this board, its sole function is to make recommendations on the building code, which first go to the Planning and Zoning Commission. It's discussed at the Planning and Zoning Commission and then passed on to the Board of Supervisors. So it's a lengthy process to get there. But again, its sole purview is over the building code.
Okay, correct. But I heard things today that I've taken note of and will work and see if these are things that we will go on a future agenda to discuss that are, that maybe we can discuss and make happen instead of just going around in circles here.
I agree. I would propose to the board that I believe we can make a motion to alleviate agenda items 6, 8, and 9.
I would agree on item 6. I think the agenda needs to be addressed on items 8 and 9 individually at least, though. It needs to be open to allow anybody who might have a comment to make those comments on those items at those times.
Chairman Hamilton, if I may, and I appreciate your perspective on this, and honestly, we appreciate the feedback. The discussion is very helpful, and you all being experts in the field and knowing from your side of the table what you go through, Mr. Adams, and what he's gone through, the feedback is very helpful for us in looking at our processes and looking where we might be able to improve. So while the board may not be able to take a specific action regarding to zoning or any of those other things, the feedback is appreciated and valued. So.
And Mr. Walsh, I believe these items, and correct me if I'm wrong, I believe these items can be discussed in some form of roundtable with a contractor or contractors. It's not the action of the board to make these decisions to save time, if you will, because our time is valuable. We can discuss these items, but we're not going to get anywhere with them. They have nothing to do with the code.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
I think, again, these are the discussions, and it would take, just a few minutes to just give, opinions, on discussion that we have. It might be helpful in this agenda, to have like a roundtable by builders and all that. It's not going to be on the minutes or, basically be, expanded to everyone. If I may, on this item number 6, I have a question for the staff. Is there any way that it is different reviews can be done concurrently? Because the applicant is already paid for plan check fee and things like that. And I think the point of view that Mr. Adams had was like to expedite the time. And, you know, I understand that your discussion, Director Walsh, was based on a commercial, but on the residential, you know, that also is occurring right now. And, you know, it is not moving from one point to another until point A is done to point B, which I think that, you know, that is going to expedite the permit process. If you want an example, in month of November, we had one application that for about 3 to 4 weeks was not getting to the plan check, but it was in the administrative portion of a review section. And again, as you know, our subdivision is already flood control, sewer, you know, environmental health, and all those were basically done. So again, I'm not using it as a complaint, as a basically for you to know that, you know, I think the point is if we can change that to be concurrently different, section of the building department will be able to do that. That is going to help significantly in terms of the length of time.
Definitely, Chairman Hamilton, Member Azarmi, definitely that's well noted. And we do, like I mentioned with the commercial, we do those concurrently, and where possible, we try and do as many as we can concurrently. And we are actually reviewing our processes to look at, you know, where can we remove some of the red tape, where can we improve and speed up those reviews.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry, I just have a couple comments for the board to consider because I do have considerable experience in this with the county. First of all, I don't want to dismiss Mr. Adams' frustration. I mean, I've been here almost 30 years myself, and there is new policies that come out. We often don't know exactly what the current policy is. I will say staff's always very gracious to explain it to us when something comes out like that. And I don't really have any solution to that, but or any ideas. I will say, I believe this site plan process has worked quite well in my experience, and we've had some even recently that have had very quick turnaround, a couple days, 2 or 3 days. There is follow-up required. I don't see that being different than any other agency that I've ever dealt with. I mean, there's nobody constantly calling us, giving us an update on where the site plan is or anything, but I think the process that the county has for site plans works better than any other jurisdiction that we've dealt with. So I just want to provide that as food for thought. And I think the county staff, you guys need to be recognized for doing a good job on that actually. So
Thank you, Vice Chair Prophet.
If I could second that, that was my thoughts exactly. I think as far as your process, you have, you know, from the different jurisdictions I've dealt in, by far the best process. I think it's very clear. I think it's very easy to follow. And it's been, again, my experience has been nothing but good with your process, your site plan review, your building department review. Again, I commend you guys for your process. I think your process is excellent.
Board Member Walker.
Mr. Chairman, yeah. I got a couple things to say. On the residential side, I've had no issues with permits going in, sliding through, you know. Here lately, we have had some long lead times, but on the commercial side is where I hit the wall, is in the other jurisdictions where I've submitted commercial plans, it's as long as the zoning is correct, you walk in, it's one-stop shopping. You drop it all off at the building department, they put it out to all the departments, and it goes out, comes back in. The one I did with the county, I didn't realize I had to go upstairs and drop off to, nobody ever told me that. I dropped off the plans downstairs for a building permit, not knowing it needed to go up through planning and zoning still, even though we had the zoning, I was correct. But, so it was just a communication error. You know, we finally got it resolved, but that's been my only hiccup with the, you know, the checklist. No, you know, probably my fault just as much as everyone else, but the one-stop shopping where you drop a set of plans off and they look at it and go, you got to do this, or we'll send it up there. You know, I didn't have that. I didn't feel on the commercial deal. Residential side, I've had no issues.
Thank you. Again, apparently we're going to have to take some action on this or no action. And I would like to remind the board again that we are for the advisory code board, not to basically tell planning and zoning their steps are wrong or right. I can
We're just saying
recommend it.
our
I just think we need to do it in a round table.
Okay.
We're a advisory code board, and that's where we need to be. And so that's why I'm asking this about agenda items 6, 8, and 9. So apparently before us, we need to get something, a motion or a second, I believe, on 6 to take action or no action, which we can't take action to begin with.
Chairman
I would
Hamilton.
like to make a motion that we take no action.
Second.
Any further discussion? Yes, I'm saying. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries. Agenda item number 7, discuss and possible action regarding wind speed requirements, residential IRC and commercial IBC. Mr. Adams, we have you listed to speak on this matter.
Mr. Chairman, board members, what I'm using for reference here is a document one of our structural engineers was able to pull up off the computer. It apparently is prepared by the association in the state of Arizona that's made up of the building officials. It's this document right here. Now, it's dated 2018. It was pulled up off a computer about 6 months ago. If they've updated their website, maybe, I don't know. But anyhow, what I've used for what I'm going to say is in this document. I have a copy here if somebody would like it. But I've reviewed what everybody else in the state of Arizona has done based on this document here that is prepared by the building officials in the state. And it was kind of telling. In looking it over, I found that at least at the time this was published, there were 34 jurisdictions in the state of Arizona that still were under the 2006 building code. There were 40 that went to the 2012. There was one that was still under the 1994 UBC. There was one that was under the 1997 UBC. And there were 2 that were under the 2003. But more specifically, part of them report the wind speed that they use in this document. Not all of them, part of them. Of all of them that reported the wind speed, 35 used 90 miles an hour, according to this document. There is one, Coconino County, that uses 105 miles an hour. They got from somewhere. And believe it or not, there are 4 that use 115 miles an hour. And Yuma also has it split. But at any rate, in reviewing the building code, I find out in the building code, the commercial code, the wind speed is 90 miles an hour. If you go to the residential code, it's 95 miles an hour. Now that doesn't sound like much, but it's a big difference when you're engineering, particularly metal buildings. It's a huge difference. So I look at that and say, what could the possible reasoning be? Does wind blow harder on a residence than it does on a commercial building? Why would it be 90 on a commercial building and 95 on a residential? I don't think anybody can justify that. And since we've had a problem with that, I'll make a recommendation. Amend the building code to 90 like everybody else in the state so we don't have that dog and pony show to go through anymore. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Adams. Staff?
Chairman Hamilton, board members, I have seen the document that Mr. Adams presented. It is an old document from the Arizona Building Officials Association. As I said, I gave you a document today that this week I researched all the counties and looked at all their wind loading. That copy you have in front of you. If we want to put it back up on the board, we can do that. Basically, the 2006 code did have a 90-mile-an-hour 3-second gust wind requirement for commercial and for residential. When the 12 codes came out, they basically upped that wind speed in commercial to, I believe it was 115 for both residential and commercial. In your packets, there is a copy of the current 2018 wind chart. These charts were updated for the 18 code. The residential one, if you look in Air Nevada portion, it says 115 on those. That is the residential section. They appeared not to change this map, yet they did change the commercial map, which if you look at that, it has a 95-mile-an-hour wind loading, and both these maps can be what they call linear interpolation. So basically you can inch over by sectors of 5 increments and actually get a wind thing. So what we did find out was the residential code in the ICC Council basically used an old wind standard of American Society of Civil Engineers 710. So that was a standard back in about 2012. The engineering standard for wind loading actually was revised to a 716 standard. So what we found out was that the commercial mapping in the IBC was designed to the newer standard of engineering, and the residential stayed at the older standard of the 17. So in all actuality, what happened was the 18 codes basically lowered the wind speed in commercial from 115 to 99 miles an hour. Now there's a section in the IBC that says residential structures being engineered can also utilize the International Building Code standards for wind loading. So in actuality, even though the chart in the IRC indicates a 115 wind loading for residential structures, they can utilize the IBC, which would bring that wind load down to 99 miles an hour. And that's pretty much standard. As I said, the sheet I gave you from the counties, most all of them are indicating the 115 wind speed for residential and 99 mile an hour for commercial. But again, I reiterate that you can utilize the 99 mile an hour for residential structures that are being engineered. Actually, we found out too that the 2021 code actually changed the IRC table back to the higher engineering standard and does lower it down to 99 miles an hour for both commercial and residential. And so it's a matter of the different code changes. They looked at the different ways wind was being addressed. I'll just say, if you look at the 115 for residential, this 115 was from Nevada all the way over to, it looks like almost Kentucky. So there was a very wide spread across the country of one standardized wind loading, and further refining and looking at, the wind events we have, tornadoes and hurricanes and stuff. The Code Council really they supposedly redid both the maps for the 18 code, but obviously the IRC map didn't get changed. In the 2021 code, they have both been changed. And a lot more specific of those areas and wind areas. Another one we actually look at was, it's called a ATC, or it's an Applied Technology Council website. It is an engineering website that you can go on and specifically look at your location, and it will give you the ultimate and the basic wind speed for that area, and it's a designing tool. That map or that program is also called out in the footnotes of the IBC wind loading map table. So they actually recognize it as being a tool to recognize what wind loading it is. And the reason they were doing that is if we had a wind zone, basically, there was incorporated into the code, a little bit in the 2012 code and a lot more in the 18 code of topography situations to where you could lower or increase your wind speed based on the topography around you. So if there were trees and mountains, you could reduce that wind speed. If you were out in the flatlands or plains, you would be held at the standard of the map. So they did give some allowances for some different topography characteristics of the property for wind loading. So that's what we found out.
Thank you.
Any questions?
Any comments from the board? Board Member Walker?
Well, since they're going to lower it with the 21 code, should we just recommend to make it, change to it now and bring it down to the 99, or do we want to go lower, or do we want to leave it the same?
That's up to us to make the recommendation.
Chairman Hamilton and board members, actually, again, I want to reiterate, there is in the IBC code, it does say that you can use the IBC wind load of 99 for residential structures. So there is a provision already accounting for that.
Maybe we wouldn't have to
So
take.
we do not need to do any action.
So you're saying that that would mean we wouldn't have to take action at all then if you're able to do that from that site?
Chairman Hamilton, that's correct, yes.
Any other discussion from the board? I need a motion to take no action or to take action.
I'll make a motion to take no action.
Board Member Walker's made a motion to take no action. Do I have a second? Vice Chair Prophet has made a second. All those any more discussion? All those in favor of the motion before us have taken no action of line item number 7, agenda item number 7, signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. Agenda item number 8, and again, I would like to stress that we're an advisory code board, and this item talks about development review fees in the process, so
Mr. Chairman,
we can't make any recommendations or any actions. So do we need a vote to dismiss this item, or?
Chairman Hamilton, I would recommend that if there's anybody who has signed up to speak on the item, that we allow that person to speak on the item. But again, as I indicated, unless one of the board members comes up with some way that the code can address the issue, I don't believe that there's any action that can be taken on these two items.
Mr. Chairman, I think the item was already spoken for, so, we can say no action. But
Okay, we do have to let Mr. Adams speak as well, though.
Yes.
Have you got your steps in for the day, Mr. Adams, by the way?
Mr. Chairman, I will log a minor complaint. It's really hard to be first and listen to everybody else not be able to counter anything. But anyhow, in this particular instance, I want to say, the problems we discussed here today aren't so much the code. It's the new interpretation. That's what's changed. These things aren't new. We've had 60 years, 100 years experience with them. What's different today is we got a different interpretation. And that's where the problem is. Thank you. I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Adams. The recommendation that I believe we need to,
I make a motion for no action.
Is there a second for no action?
I'll second that motion.
Is there any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Carries. Agenda item number 9, discussion and possible action regarding site plan review fees. Again, I'm going to stress that this is not a code item. Mr. Adams, you have signed up to speak. Would you like to say a few words on?
Thank you.
Thank you for your time. Agenda item number 9, I believe we need to make a motion to take no action on this, if we may, please.
So moved.
Second?
I'll second.
It's been moved and second that we take no action on agenda item number 9. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Before we get into our next tentative meeting, I just would like to say and maybe address to staff that we've been here close to 2 hours or right at that. And there's been a couple of these items that are on the agenda that don't address the code or any effect to the board. If I may suggest that when we have our next meeting, to only include items that deal with the current or the existing or new codes or whatever we need to address on the codes, if we could, please. Does the board have anything to say by chance before we discuss the next meeting?
Mr. Chairman, I just want to thank the staff. I've been here 32 years and I've seen county from where it was 32 years ago until now, and we are constantly making improvement, especially the recent years. So I just want to, for them to understand that we recognize as the builder, as this side of the fence, your hard work, and I know that you're trying hard to continue to improve your customer service and all that. And again, since you are in a different position, sometimes you don't see what's going on in the field, and very appreciative of you taking our comments when we basically bring it up to your attention. So thank you.
Thank you. Number 10 on the agenda is discuss tentative scheduled meeting for April 12th, 2023. Does anybody have any discussion on that? Or is everybody able to make it? That would be Wednesday, April 12th, 2023.
I'm good.
2 p.m.?
2 p.m.?
Yep.
So the next advisory code board meeting is set for April 12th, 2023. Is there any further discussion from the board or the staff before we adjourn this meeting? Or our attorney?
Chairman Hamilton, none from me. Thank you.
Thank you. I would need a motion.
I motion we adjourn the meeting.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we adjourn our January 11th, 2023 Advisory Code Board meeting. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All opposed? Meeting adjourned.
Richard, you're so